It says property tax, it says prorations and adjustments. The seller shall pay the delinquent property taxes. The seller will pay the current year's property taxes, and there will be no tax prorations or no proration of taxes. So that means that you keep their prepaid money. And that can mean a lot or it can mean a little. So like there's two tax periods, there's a December tax bill and a July tax bill that come out. So the July usually is when the big taxes are paid. So if they just paid their July taxes and they're prepaid, so like if this was closing on like in August, there's going to be a lot of prepaid taxes, right? Because that's a big tax bill, so you'd be a home major win then. But if this was closing at the end of July, the tax prorations don't mean a whole lot. Do you follow?
And if the seller is a student.
Because taxes, let's just use taxes. Let's say the winter taxes is $500, comes due in December, and the summer taxes are due in July, and they are $1,000. So if the closing took place in August, those taxes would be prepaid, so you would be getting $1,000, right? If the closing took place in July, they haven't prepaid their taxes, so the value of the getting prepaid taxes or the no prorations is not a lot of benefit to you, because you've used up part of your winter, which is a smaller amount. So it does. All this clause means to me, it's a throwaway clause. It's for them to take to their attorney and their attorney to tell me, no, there needs to be tax prorations. That's what that means. Thank you. Okay. So the big test question from this morning on the first page is if you buy something subject to, what does that mean?
Your escape clause.
No? Well, sort of.
Something has to be performed.
What does that say? You're just buying it subject to whatever those conditions are. You're not agreeing to assume and pay those, right? It's a real powerful word. One time I used to sell paper, so I would have a mortgage on a property, an underlying mortgage, or underlying land contract, and then I resold on another land contract. So I would sell that paper to a company called Mortgage Corporation of America. That ended up going out of business. But when I sold that paper to them, they would take my underlying mortgage, they would take it subject to that existing mortgage. On the assignment said subject to, which means they didn't agree to pay my underlying mortgage. And they took my second land contract, or my underlying land contract. But when they took the other one, where the people were paying me, you know, they took that with all of its rights. So they could have not paid that, collected the money. Do you see? They weren't going to do that because they wanted to collect, but that way if the person ever paying on the second walked away, or the second land contract, they would have the right to throw that in the trash if they wanted to. So subject to means a lot. You just need to be clear about that.
Let me reiterate. Subject to means you're not assuming the liability to pay the mortgage.
You're taking it subject to, you're taking that mortgage subject to whatever the existing conditions, the taxes and everything. It's not saying you're going to pay them.
Okay.
And then in that paragraph on that thing, it says that it spells it out and says we're not going to be liable. And they're willing to do that because you are a realtor and you're going to work, not a realtor, but you are an investor and you're going to get this thing resold and you're going to work on it, and you've explained to them. Okay? Okay, so the back to paragraph 8, property taxes. So there's no prorations. Special assessments which are due and payable or lien are both on the property on or before the above date shall be paid by the seller. All other special assessments, including defaulted assessments for improvements, now installed or in the process of being installed, but not yet, lien shall be paid by the buyer. This is any security deposits from the tenants shall be given to the buyer at closing. The seller up to the date of the closing shall pay the outstanding water bills. The seller agrees to escrow, and I put $1,500, but that's not even sufficient. In some of the closings I did, I now have a house in Detroit that has a $16,000 water bill against it. So you need to, there's a deed off. I was glad to get it. So, They probably just had the water on full tilt or were selling it, or maybe they could, you ever seen, when you're out looking at properties, sometimes when you go to a property, you're looking at distress situations, there's like a female garden hose, the plug, and it's gone into the neighbor's socket, and it runs through the yard over into the next house and it's screwed in. What they're doing is pressurizing the water system in both houses. So basically what they're doing is stealing the water from the neighbor. Do you follow? Or when you're going to look at a vacant house, you never just walk in the front door, it's got a lockbox. You always walk to the backyard to see if the door's kicked in, or if it's snow, there's footprints going in and out of the house to make sure vagrants aren't living in it. You look at the electric meter to see if there's the meter's usually removed. There might be 2 nails or 2 metal prongs in there. That means if you touch that, you'd be dead. But it also means that they've got the juice on in the house. They've got like test bars in there to make sure that the juice works. So they're actually stealing electric. Those are all things. You go in the basement, and if you've got a stove, you've seen stoves where you hook the gas line up, the gas meter's removed and those are screwed in both places. That's called stealing gas. So that starts to give you an indication of the kinds of things that are going on, okay? So you want to always go to the back of the house if you're going to enter a house and look and see what's going on. Because like some of the houses that had vagrants in them, that's exactly, you know, that it was, you could just see all the footprints. It's all, and I've seen them where they're stealing the electric with the garden hose wrapped with the electric tape over to the house next door, you know, so it's like, so it doesn't freeze in the winter. Okay, so.
What do they do with gas? What does it look like?
Gas has got like a straight pipe, like a gas stove. You go in the basement, instead of seeing that the gas meter will be sitting on the floor, and there'll be or the gas meter won't be there because it's already been removed. I mean, already in city of Pontiac, if you were there, a lot of the gas meters are on the outside, so there'd be there's no lock on it and it's turned on. I mean, but it's all things to look for, usually an indication of what's going on. Okay, so we've got a $1,500 water escrow there. And that doesn't mean anything, it's just up to, you get to say, this is all on a Word format. And if you give an email, who's collecting the email? You got them? So if you email me, then I'll email you the latest version of the buyer favorable purchase agreement, okay? Or we'll add that to the list that I email out. So now you've got it in a Word document. You can go in and correct all my misspelled words and add your own new clauses and take out the stuff you don't like and call it your standard purchase agreement, okay?
In regard to the example that Lori had, the people who are behind $3,000 in taxes, would you scratch that paragraph completely, number 8?
Well, it says they have to bring the taxes up.
I mean, how are they going to pay it? I mean, they don't have money.
Well, it doesn't matter because she's just got a contract and she needed to have something in writing that said that she got it for $1. She's okay with that.
So you still leave it there?
Yeah, she'll have to deal with it when she sells it in this case because that's what she's going to be doing. Actually, who's going to have to pay that is the bank because she's going to do a short sale, and that's going to be on their HUD statement showing they have to pay that water bill.
So the bank will pay it?
Yeah, the bank's going to be stuck with that bill if she's successful doing a short sale. Number 9, title insurance. Title insurance at the seller's expense. The seller shall provide the buyer with a standard Alta owner's policy, title insurance, and the amount of the purchase price effective as of the date of the closing. The commitment to be issued by insuring the marketable title. Vested in the buyer, including a tax status report, and shall be made payable to the buyer. So now, the only thing I got to say on that is if you're the one taking possession of this property, you can pay for what's called gap insurance. And what the title companies do is they give you they're insuring the buyer of a property, they're insuring them up to a certain date that they last checked. If somebody filed a claim against the property or something they missed, there's coverage in there that says that if there's any whoopses, that the buyer's stuck with that. Gap insurance says that they're gonna insure it right up to the minute you sign at the closing.
How much does that typically cost?
I don't know, it could be like 20% more. And that's what mortgage companies do, they get what's called gap insurance.
So that's standard with every deal.
No, what's standard with every deal is whatever you decide is standard. I'm telling you that 99.9% of the people that do mortgage closing or selling their houses don't get gap insurance, and 99.9% of the investors don't get gap insurance. And the only reason you want to do it in this market is because of the intense level of mortgage fraud and documents getting altered, and that it's just worth the additional coverage.
You said they will insure it up to the.
The moment you close.
Okay.
Now, title insurance, just so you know, when you've got a claim on title insurance, this is like real world stuff, because we've been to closings and things haven't been right, and the title company needed to make it right. They don't just, here, let me write a check out. And then, here's the other thing, you're buying a property for $10,000, right? And you put $20,000 in repairs, your title insurance is for $10,000. So they're insuring $10,000. So if you're going to, and they don't just pay off, they don't go, well, here's $10,000 or here's this or solve the problem. They usually want to fight it. They'll try to investigate it, they'll work on getting the right people in. They don't just go, here, let me remedy this or let me title insure over it. It usually comes with some, you've got to kind of fight your way through it.
So that's why you want the gap?
No, that doesn't do that anything for you either. I'm just letting you know, just because you have a title claim doesn't mean it's just gonna be, oh, well, here, let me correct it.
So you're talking something like claim of interest, they can over-insure that, so.
Well, sure, here's how that would happen. So here, one of my ex-partners had a lot of money, let's call him Mr. Pickle, okay? So Mr. Pickle is a very deep-pocketed investor, very deep. He's got $2 million or more, just liquid assets. So now he's working, and I filed a claim of interest against one of his properties. I was his partner, so I filed the claim. Now he's selling the property. And he tells the title company, I'll indemnify you and title insure against any claims on Moffitt's part. Because that's a false claim of interest, it's not that big, and if you have a problem, I'll pay it off. That title company can elect to title insure over it. So,
And if you go after them?
it's back to, what's it cost to sue somebody? You got
Right.
If they have a $2,500 claim, I'm gonna be $10,000, $15,000, bringing a suit against them.
Will you go after the title company or Mr. Pickle?
No, I'm done, he wins.
You win, okay.
So I just want to point out, when you're up against money and power, you need to take that into consideration. So does everybody, I mean, I'm just, you gotta use common sense in this business. All we're doing, So I just want to let you know, just because you got title insurance doesn't mean you have insurance. It's just like that, it's going to happen. It doesn't work like that. And they will work to clean it all up, and they'll push to get it done. But Irvy and Janik, that are members here, they have that situation where they closed with title insurance, and then the title company is telling them that they're not going to represent them, and they had to go get an attorney to get the title company to represent them. So,
On what basis?
but
On what basis they're not presented?
because there was 2 simultaneous closings or something, where there was 2 liens against the property or whatever, there was fraud involved in it. It wasn't on their part, but all I know was the agency, the title company that insured it, didn't actually, they were a little title company, and they weren't, the underwriter they were using didn't ever know about the closing. They were just collecting the fees, and but the underwriter eventually stepped up to bat. So that's another thing I've experienced in this business. I had a title company, I'm not going to say which one, it was in Oakland County. It's a small title company. They never recorded any of the documents. So at the closings, they just like kept them, okay? So then what happened was months and months, and they went out of business. So then what happened was I bought properties and I went to go to resell them and I didn't have clean title. But I had my title insurance and I had to go back to the underwriter that had to title insure over. That did not just happen quickly. So you want to look at who the title company is you're dealing with. Are they a larger title company? How long have they been around? Who's their underwriter? You know, those are all questions. I'm not, so like we talked about competent parties, you know, I ran into that like out of 3,500 homes a couple times, you know, and it's like you don't run into this typically, but I'm just saying you do run into that, so you just need to be aware of it. And as an investor, you just want to look at who the title company is and who their underwriter is, you know.
So it says that the seller pays for the title insurance, but you can't wait. You go ahead and have the title insurance done. So do you pay ahead of time, or does that just come out?
It gets paid at the time of
At
closing.
the time of closing. Gotcha.
And then on the title insurance, there's been times I've paid for the title insurance as the buyer, because the people said, no, I got to net this amount, because remember we do the net sheets? No, I have to have this, so it's all addressed up front. But now at the Roy closing, that won't happen, you know, so you get to address it at the table.
So rather than lose the deal, you pay for it.
Yeah, it was a good deal.
Okay. What does it typically run?
Title insurance on a $10,000 deal would be like, I don't know, $250 or something like that. And then it's all based upon what the sales price is. And you can get from a title company, they'll actually give you a chart so you can actually figure out exactly what it is for whatever the dollar amount. And that's regulated by the state. And then the other thing is title companies can charge for their closings. So you need to find out those fees. That's why you're doing a net sheet. And then who pays those fees? The title company. That's a negotiation too. In this case, we want the seller to pay for them, unless we're selling. Then we want the buyer if we can. So it's all negotiation. Okay, let's go to number 9. The closing shall be held on or before. Remember, we had it out 60 days, and it's not going to be 2004. So we're going to do 60 days from today's date. And then you're going to put 2006, and as promptly as practical after all necessary documents have been prepared. An additional period of 60 days, and that could be 90 days if you want to make it, shall be allowed for the closing to accommodate delays in title work or corrections of title defects, which can be readily corrected, delays in obtaining any required inspections, surveys, or repairs, or if the terms of the purchase agreement require the participation of a lender, and the lender has issued a commitment consistent with the requirements, but is unable to participate in the closing on or before the required date, or if the buyer requires additional time to review the closing documents at his sole option, the seller shall pay all closing costs. So does that look like something that you could extend your closing out further?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's really buyer favorable there. So now we had a closing that was going to be 60 days, and we just got another 60 days that we can allow, and then if there's a lender involved, we can buy some more time. Inspection of the premise. You know, the buyer could waive his right to inspect, or then you could check the other one, and then you could have the right to inspect it with a purchaser or contractor of your choice. Give the number of days.
Typically, how many days does that take? A week, 10 days, or?
That's a negotiation. You could have, your inspection period could be 10 days, 7 days, 5 days, whatever you want it to be. And that could be your escape clause, you know.
Do you usually have an inspector yourself? Or your walkthrough is enough personally for you?
Well, for personally, no, I'm the inspector, but I've done enough rehabs, I felt comfortable doing that.
Do you recommend for new investors to do their own, or to hire an inspector?
The first thing I'd recommend for a new investor is to take the one-day course where you do the home inspections, and then after that, if you didn't feel comfortable, you should hire somebody to do it. You know, I think that probably if you're gonna do it, you probably wanna pay to have it inspected. Now, a lot of home inspection things are there to find every default, every problem they can, so you gotta use common sense. I mean, you're buying in some cases, a 80-year-old or 100-year-old home, you know, it's not gonna be up to snuff, so they're gonna find tons of stuff. So that's why I recommend one of those courses, because they actually have you looking at everything you need to look at when you're buying something. I'm not going to get into damages. I want to jump down to number 15. Assignment by the buyer or the buyer's interest in this agreement shall not be prohibited in any way, or the notice required to the seller should an assignment occur. Seller waives any right to review the creditworthiness or the financial information of any assignees in this agreement. The buyer is an investor. And in the event of an assignment, the buyer may charge a fee. So it basically just says, it just protects you because I am going to assign it. Claims of interest, which is number 19, says claim of interest. It's agreed and understood by all parties that the buyer may at his or her its sole option file and register a claim of interest or a memorandum of purchase agreement with the Register of Deeds in the county in which the subject property is located. So if you look in your file there, there's called a memorandum of purchase agreement. All that is a claim of interest, okay? It's just like a polite term for it, okay? Because this is a buy-sell agreement, and so it's just a memorandum of a buy-sell, I think is what it's called. Do you see it? Okay.
And you call that a claim of interest?
That's it. What's it called?
Memorandum of buy-sell agreement.
Yeah, so that you've got a buy-sell agreement here, so it's a memorandum of buy-sell.
And this is the claim of interest you filed.
That is a claim of interest. Now, in my forms packet, there's a thing called a claim of interest. Same thing. You don't need to have the seller sign the memorandum. You could, but you don't have to. I used to have them sign it just because I'd want to be able to say, you know, they were aware of it too. But all it requires is the buyer to sign it. So I don't do that anymore because we group all of our claims in one big claim of interest and file them all at the same time. So, you know, that's the most critical thing you can do if you're a bird dog, if you're looking to sign purchase agreements, because you can't go out and market your deal because people will go around you. Other investors will go take your deal away from you.
When you register, there's a fee, and then you had mentioned if there's additional pages, there's a price per page. This is one page. Under what circumstances would you have additional pages to this?
In our office, we always have additional pages because we're getting multiple deals signed, and I don't want to spend a lot of money with the Register of Deeds. So we have one claim of interest filed by Budget Realty, and we file it against all the properties, and we just wait till we get like 20 or so of them.
So there's
Enough to
one
fill
sheet.
up. Well, we fill up the first page, and then we got an additional page of all the other addresses that the claim's going against.
Okay.
So it's a lot cheaper for us to just go down and file one.
Okay.
When you file a claim of interest, you need to make a copy of that claim of interest. And you take that copy with you when you go to the Register of Deeds, and they time stamp it.
Right.
Otherwise, you have a problem because there's a delay in the time that they record the deeds, okay? That's why gap insurance, okay? So your claim isn't gonna show up immediately if you did a title search.
Yeah.
Okay, does everybody follow that? So you need to have a copy of that claim of interest. So if you're dealing with a title company or somebody, you can show that you've got a claim actually recorded against the property because it's been time stamped. And take a look at that memorandum of, what is it called again? Memorandum of buy-sell agreement. So if you're gonna go, so Javon was just at the house. If she did that in blue ink, what would happen? It's no good. Has to be filled out in black ink. Has to be printed very neatly. There's, I don't think you want to use, let me look at the memorandum.
Is there any particular reason why?
There's, before you go taking any claim of interest down to the county, there's a certain act that has to be shown on the claim of interest. If that, this is, I'm talking about the city of Detroit. If that act doesn't show, they'll deny your claim of interest. So on our claim of interest in the thing, it's on there. If you did the foreclosure boot camp, the right claim's there, but we can email you that claim with the right wordage on it. And you can just add it to something like this ahead of time. And it's not on this one. So if somebody filled this one out and went to Oakland County, they would be okay. If they went to Wayne County, the city of Detroit, they would reject.
Why you said we can't do it at the beginning?
Because it's the, I don't know, it's not the law, it's a regulation or whatever, because they won't take it. That's how, you know, it's like, you know, it's shifted and everything has to be in black ink. So, I think the signature could be in blue, but I think everything else has to be in black.
Are you stating that that's for the Oakland County Register of Deeds, but the requirement may change per county?
I am saying every county I've gone to requires it to be in black ink, so I don't know if it's a state or if it's just the counties I've been going to, but I know in Wayne and Oakland, for sure it has to be in black ink.
I don't know the reason, but the only thing I can think of is for scanning purposes, because I know that banks don't like certain documents to have certain color ink. So for scanning it and maybe sending it off to this.
I don't know
Other
any
than
else.
that, I can't think of a reason
The
either.
way it's on the Detroit one is different from this one.
Are you guys cold? Look at your cold. Or, I mean, if you're cold, we'll turn it, because okay, I just want to make sure.
What requires what on there? Public Act number.
You got it with you?
And I got that down,
Do you know what the act number is?
not right offhand.
Does anybody have the foreclosure seminar? That act number's, I think, on there.
Where does the act number get put in?
At the top.
It's already on the one
Oh.
in our office. We can email you a copy of that. I don't know what it is. If you find it, just yell out. So,
I have it written down as a document form I'll mail out, so.
oh, so you're gonna email, oh, we'll just, yeah, we'll email that, so we're good. Everybody will get it, okay?
5 attachments so far.
We're doing good. Okay, so the claim of interest. Does everybody understand why that's just absolutely critical? Okay. Okay, attorney's approval. It's agreed and understood that all parties that enter, either the buyer or the seller's attorney may review this offer and attachments within, you could put 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, whatever you want, from the date of final acceptance hereof, if upon the advice of the council, either party seeks to cancel this agreement, they may do so in writing to the other party within 1 day from the last date allowed for such a review by delivery to in person. So that is like just, it's solved all kinds, or avoided all kinds of litigation problems for me, in my opinion. And it stopped a lot of problems, and it really helps And that you wanna just make sure to tell them that they need to do that. And that's the one thing I do show people when we do a purchase agreement. When I'm there for the, like I said, in and out in 20 minutes, I tell them that I'm gonna sign the purchase agreement to somebody else for our profit. I tell them that the first buyer might not work out, and there's extension clauses in here because this is a drama clause when you start looking at number 10, where you can extend the closing if you need to. I tell them I have a buyer, and I tell them, if I know who I think the buyer is, I'll even tell them who I think the buyer's gonna be, and I explain what I'm gonna do. But I'm gonna say, I've been around this business a long time, sometimes the buyers fall through, that's why I have additional time here. And the reason I need the additional time is I'm gonna be spending money on this property, marketing it, I'm gonna be ordering title work on it, I'm going to work on this property. So I need to make sure that I'm not gonna get clobbered on this deal either, so. And you'll either at that time have an agreement with them that you've got the additional time, or you guys will adjust to whatever you've agreed to. But those are conversations I'm gonna have to make sure they totally understand it. And then I'm gonna have the attorney clause, I'm gonna make sure to tell them I want them to take it to an attorney. And then I want them to, if they don't know an attorney, take it to a realtor, take it to somebody that's knowledgeable in this business for your review. And call me if there's any problems. There's a number 21, it just, it's reiterating the disclosures that you've checked those off. If you're a licensed realtor, you want to use paragraph 23. If you're a realtor in the state of Michigan and you're offering on a deal, it's law that you disclose that you're a realtor. And that means if you're a realtor and it's your limited liability company offering on, you need to disclose that you're a realtor. So. And that's the other thing inside real estate. You need to disclose, 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 disclose. The more you disclose, the less problems you have. So I don't think you can have enough disclosure. So by that I mean if I was going to sell a house, if I'm the seller, not the buyer, if I'm the seller of a house, and there's a question on that seller disclosure, it says it's a basement leak. All basements leak in the state of Michigan. So I'm gonna say the basement may leak, even if I don't think it leaks. Because why? Because I've been sued enough for basements leaking. So I'm not gonna have that happen to me again. All basements leak in the state of Michigan for me, and I'm gonna disclose that. If I have paid a contractor to cut the shingles back, so that when you look at the house, it cosmetically only looks like there's one layer of shingles, but it has two, okay? I'm going to disclose that there's 2 layers of shingles. If I've gone in a basement and used seal lock to lock the walls so that because the basement walls leak, okay, that temporarily fixes that, so that when they go down in the basement, they see a basement that's dry, I'm going to disclose that the basement has got seal lock on it, and it's a temporary fix, and the basement's going to leak. So you want to, even though you cosmetically fix a house up, so that it shows well, you need to disclose everything you can think of that's wrong with it, and you will avoid lawsuits.
Why would you cover those things up? Just,
Oh, I would absolutely, if I was gonna put a second layer of shingles on the roof, why would I want that house to look like it had 2 layers? If I was the owner of that house, living in that house, I would cut it back because I cosmetically want it to look like only 1 layer of shingles. I don't want to cheat anybody. I want to tell them it's got 2 layers of shingles. I want to verbally tell them that and give it to them in writing. I want to make sure they're aware of it. Why is because when you go, it's sight, taste, and all that, when you go in the basement, there's no water there, it looks good. This is gonna leak, this is, you tell them, they can deal with that. Why wouldn't you want to have it fixed up as best you could for what your budget is?
but then you,
So I don't wanna do
You
anything
disclose this
unethical. What?
at what point do you disclose all this?
Well, when
It's
you-
all right at
yeah.
this early on? Okay,
Yeah, early
okay,
on,
I got you,
yeah.
it's not later, okay.
No, not
Right
at
up
the closing
front.
table.
Okay.
Is that verbal?
Now that's why, the reason I'm saying that, this is why I'm saying it, what I would do, you want to tell the people you're buying the house from, You want them to disclose everything they can think of that's wrong with that house. Why? Because you're gonna be, you could be flipping this house to
Yeah.
somebody else, you know, you close and buy it and resell it, you've gotta know all that stuff. I can't, one more second. I got people that disclosed to me that they had no problems with lead-based paint problems. They were being sued by their tenant for lead-based paint. I then sold it. Bought it here, sold it there, and disclosed that there was no lead-based paint problems because I did it based upon the other one. Had I not had that other seller's, or that lead-based paint disclosure statement, I would have been sued. That saved my butt. So that's, you know, you gotta, paperwork's critical inside what you hang on to. Larry?
Do you feel an affirmative duty to state something that isn't, like saying, all basements in Michigan's leak, therefore this basement leaks, or?
I say it may, because I don't know. And I'm only putting that in there because that's just me.
Would you feel just as comfortable, would you have the same confidence if you knew that there had been a water problem and it had been repaired? Would you feel comfortable putting down, basement leak was repaired by V-Dry in 2004, and then that's your disclosure?
If I had the B-Drive information, I had their warranty work that I got from the seller, and here's their warranty work, and then I would still put, but the basement may leak, because I don't know. I just don't want the lawsuit, because I guess it's because I got like a, you remember what we said earlier, like you have a bad experience, and your past is like not in your past, it's like in front of you in the future, so I'm like dragging that around with me. So like I'm just overly concerned about it.
Has that ever proved to be a detriment to a potential buyer, that they look at the basement, they flood and walk away?
It's had potential where they've paid for an inspector, and I've had 1 or 2 deals blow up as a result of it, and not sold the house. But it was back to, I just didn't care, you know, because I just didn't want the lawsuit. I experienced the lawsuit the other way, and that ate up all my time, exactly what you described earlier. So I just felt like the cost of that was too great.
Would a homeowner's warranty that you paid $350 for cover that kind of?
No.
No?
No,
Is that just major mechanical?
yeah, the warranties are, I mean, they're great, you give people warranties like that, but
How long do you keep your paperwork? I mean, you said that one paperwork saved you about how many years do you?
whatever's the law, I don't even know what the law is on paperwork. You know what the law is? I mean, I've still got paperwork from ever ago. It's like I got mounting paperwork, so I don't know how long it. but I
The
think
law on
it's-
paperwork is 7 years for the Internal Revenue Service.
So the same thing would apply to real estate documents?
I can't give you.
Yeah, I don't know.
advice.
Keep them in your basement, so it's keep the basement leak. I mean, yeah, but went through a lot of properties, so that's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, and I haven't been sued that many times for basement leaks. I just got sued enough that became a concern of me to put that in, that's all. I'm saying the disclosure, the more disclosure, the better off you are. But the main thing is when you're buying something, you want to make sure they disclose everything that's wrong. Don't forget, you're the one that's assigning this. Now you need to give, out of due respect, if I'm assigning this to Ron, I need to make sure that he knows what he's getting, you know, so I want to, you know, another property that Moppin assigned to me that's got wrong with it. Because that's the kind of stuff that happens to you.
But if, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, if you never lived in a property, how would you know every defect if the original seller didn't tell you about it? Is there a sheet that says on?
I'm gonna write in there that I've never lived in it, but I'm not, don't forget, I'm assigning him that purchase agreement. So I want to make sure that my seller disclosed everything humanly possibly wrong with that property.
So you're assuming a worst case scenario? So
Yeah, because I want him to
you.
keep coming back to me to buy the property, and I don't want to ever hear about how I assigned him something with a bunch of crap, you know. It's everybody's decision on how you do it, you know, I'm just saying that's how I do it. There is no rules about how this, what your purchase agreement looks like or anything, we just. Then paragraph 26, I didn't even put that in there. That was another broker I worked with, and we just left it in. The broker wanted it in there. It says the seller agrees that the property will be resold, and if the resale is conducted under complete control, so you can understand why the broker wanted it in there, complete control of the broker, buyer, investor, the seller will not in any way interfere with conducting the resale of the, or commit to act to hinder in any way, or or they, what he was gonna do was pop them with a $2,000 fee, so. The lender restrictions, number 27.
Mark, can I ask you a quick question? If you don't use 26, do you scratch it off?
No, I leave it in there,
Oh, all right.
Mark, can you go back to home
because
warranty?
nobody complains about it.
Can you go back to home warranty?
Sure,
Do you do those?
if somebody wants one, when I would resell houses, but they really don't do much for anybody, because there's a big deductible, and
They've been good to me. I
They
mean,
have?
When I
Okay.
bought my house, that winter, I had a furnace problem, and I paid $75, and my furnace got fixed, whether it would have to be replaced or not.
So
So
that's
I let
something you
them.
had to set up? Or ask
no,
the
there's
seller, do
companies
they
that'll do
want
it.
one?
They used to be, and I haven't done one in a while, it's like, what, $350 or something?
Yeah, they're no more than
Walmart.
$350, and you can renew them every year.
But you go back to the seller, that's something that you set up, or you? or you-
Typically,
or
the
you-
seller will pay for a home warranty, sometimes the buyer will pay for half, sometimes the buyer wants to pay for a home warranty.
But you
and-
as the middleman, it's just really setting this up, who's in charge of setting up, if the buyer requests it, is that something the realtor that you brought in would set up, or?
Yeah, there's a bunch of home warranty companies, so you can just pick one and, write the home warranty with them.
You can suggest to the buyer, you can suggest that they buy it. You can ask them to request the seller if they would buy it. So you just like the middle person making the suggestion.
The buyer pays for it?
The buyer agent would like to have his buyer probably have the seller pay for a home warranty so they don't have problems at a later date. And sometimes, as a seller, they want to pay for the home warranty, because if you fixed the property up and rehabbed it all the way, it's just like cheap insurance. But,
If you're not a realtor.
well, I'm not rehabbing and reselling houses. When I did that, I did home warranties, and I didn't do them all the time, it just depended. The lending restrictions, it says the buyer and the seller agree that the buyer will disclose to the buyer's choice or lender all relevant considerations regarding the purchase. In the event that the buyer and the seller agree that the buyer is or are to receive funds from this transaction for rehabilitation or renovations, the buyer will use only a lender that allows the buyer to receive funds. Here's what I'm doing. This is a clause I added to protect myself against mortgage fraud. So I'm assigning this PA to somebody, and if they want to go violate it, that's fine, but I put a clause in there telling them that if they're going to buy the house and use a lender, they need to use a lender that allows them to get cash back, because what could happen is, okay, so I signed this purchase agreement, right? And now the buyer goes and cuts a deal with the seller, because they're gonna go rewrite a new purchase agreement. I filed my claim against the property, and they're telling the seller, look, when this closes, I want you to give me back $10,000, or I need to get, they rewrite it and say they need money for rehabbing the house, and it's on a separate addendum. But whatever they did violates and creates mortgage fraud, okay? This clause is put in there saying that that's not gonna be done. It's like a restrictive covenant, So that's what I'm doing. And I don't know if it helps or doesn't help, but I just threw it out there. And then 28 is similar, so. So that's the purchase agreement. I can answer questions on, that's the buyer favorable purchase agreement.
I didn't see anywhere where you actually print the name of the buyer and the seller and the name of that usually.
You're gonna print under their name, so you know that you can't get a copy of their driver's license any longer, and no longer is it acceptable by law to get their social security number. Yeah, there's a law against that too. So now what happens is the guy you're buying the house from's name is Smith, Bob Smith. So what you're guaranteed is there's gonna be IRS liens against Bob Smith. So when they do the title work, it's gonna come back with IRS liens. Then the title company's gonna say, I need to have proof that you're not that Bob Smith. So what you need to do is have the, you need to have them voluntarily give it to you or get hold of the title company. If they've got a common name like Smith, Jones, Miller, you know, there's gonna be problems. So you want to have them address that up front.
Voluntarily provide what, driver's license number? or
Well,
social
you know that
security?
when they order the title work, there's gonna be a problem, it's guaranteed. So they need to address that directly with the title company. So if I had a Smith, and I knew what title company I was using, then I would be addressing that right on the spot.
If you bind this under your LLC, when you put the LLC name there, and then you sign it, so.
Yeah, if you were signing for a limited liability company, it would say XYZ Limited Liability Company, by its member Ralph Moppin, and I would sign it. Or RM Moppin, its member, and sign it. As the buyer, yeah.
And where would that go?
Where you're gonna sign your name as the purchaser. And do you need to initial this purchase agreement anywhere?
Yeah.
Second page, bottom, the buyer and the seller initial. So the one thing you need to know is don't worry whether you know how to fill one of these out or not. The important thing is just go sit down and do one with somebody.
What would you do if you got to the closing and when you found out that, say, the refrigerator and the stove and the appliances were supposed to stay and all of a sudden they were gone? They've been taken out. You would let that kill the deal, you
If it's a great deal and I'm making money,
didn't worry about it.
I'm not gonna worry about it.
Suppose they take
If
the
it's not
furnace
a
out.
problem for the person I'm selling it to, it's, if they take the furnace out, then you would have walked through the house right before the closing. The furnace is not there, so then you would have to address that issue at that point. We don't have a furnace. The cost to replace the furnace is $2,500, so I need to set an escrow up for $3,000. And by when will you, Mr. Seller, have the furnace installed? Or $4,000 or whatever, and then it'll need to be in writing at that point.
When do you do your final walkthroughs? The day before the closing or the day of?
It depends upon where the property's at. If you're in a tough area, you want to do it the day of. Or you could do it the day before too. I mean, you know. Some of the houses I get, they don't have the stove, they don't have the doors, they don't have the windows, they don't have any of that. It's an open floor plan, so it's not even an issue.
So you're gonna do it?
No, you just drive by and make sure there's no food, trash, or debris, the house hasn't burned.
Somebody got a radio?
No, she's talking.
Okay, so here, ask your question up here, honest. If you got a question, everybody does. Lori, what's your question? So you got that question.
Just a signature issue,
okay.
that's all, just a, didn't hear it all.
The LLC. Yeah, the LLC.
Yeah, the LLC, and what goes where.
Huh?
Is that from them, but I said, I wouldn't buy it.
What is that?
We're okay with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
are you okay?
Yeah.
You said like the name of the LLC and member.
Yeah, Larry?
Oh, I did see.
For liability insulation, are you instructing your class to create a separate LLC for each investment property that they acquire?
Yeah, I'm not giving any advice on that, because what I'm doing is I'm assigning them, and I think it's cost prohibitive when you start doing a separate limited liability company for everything. You need to just use common sense. Like, let's say, for example, if I'm dealing in junk property or challenge property, where somebody's deeding property over to me, I might have 3 or 4 properties that are challenge properties in that one LLC.
Right.
Then on stuff that I'm assigning, it's all being assigned, so I could have a lot of properties in that LLC, okay? And if I've got properties that have tremendous equity in them, you might want to have that one property in a separate LLC. So, because what happens, a limited liability company only protects, it's limited to that liability company. So it's just common sense that that limited liability company has a lot of assets in it, and it owns like 4 or 5 properties, and that's what the assets are. You might want to break that up into separate limited liability companies, or not have all your assets in one basket, because you know, you forget to put liability insurance on it, and woof, I slipped, and now we're calling Sam, and we're there to take it away from you.
What if you don't forget to do something you're supposed to do? Are you okay to keep putting them all into the same LLC? I mean, you know what I'm saying? What if you forget to do, what if you don't forget? What if you do what you're supposed to do? You can just keep putting houses in the same.
I don't understand the question.
Well, you reference, you know, what if I neglected to put insurance on a particular house and boom, somebody slips, now everything in that LLC is subject to be suing, correct?
Yes.
But if you always got
If
your
you're
own.
buying properties to hold them, and you can get legal advice on this. An LLC is going to limit what a person can sue you for to the asset that's in that LLC and your liability insurance. So if you
Okay.
have 10 properties and they're all valuable properties,
Okay.
and they're held by that one LLC, you now have become a deep pocket defendant for Sam Bernstein. And if you don't have enough liability insurance, then he gets to go after the asset of the LLC.
Okay.
If you've taken each one of those valuable properties and created a separate LLC, well, when they go to check to find out what's in that LLC, it's only going to be that particular property.
Okay.
So,
There's one more thing they can do, and that is that they can also create a second mortgage to somebody else on that property
for business
for
purposes.
business purposes, which shows that there's virtually no equity in the property, so that Sam will go away.
See, Sam's gonna pull title work on you. Ron and I are partners, okay? Ron has his limited liability company, the XYZ, and mine's the ABC, okay? So, I now have a property with a lot of equity. But Ron's my business partner, so I give him a mortgage. He puts a mortgage on the property. I've heard that somebody might even have a discharge of that mortgage in their lockbox or tucked away, undated with Ron's signature on it. But do you see, if you were looking at it from Sam's standpoint, he pulls the property up and says, wow, they got a first for this, and they've got a second on it, and the two of them together add up to 300,000, and the house is only worth 250. This person is no good. I could have a deed for a number of years. It's let's see, an estate for years or whatever. So in other words, what happens is my deed, when it got recorded at the county, says in the year 2008 that the transfer of this property goes to my wife, and it's of record. But it was deeded into my name, and then it goes out sideways, and it's a public record, because when they do the search, all they do is see the deed. So now they seize the asset, but it's only a estate for a certain number of years. And it goes sideways, so he sees an asset that leaves him. So there's all kinds of stuff. That guy is like the most master-mindful person you ever saw. And there's a book out that doesn't tell you who the authors of the book was. It's called How to Outfox the Foxes. It's an outstanding book. And I would be willing to bet money it's been written by somebody that's stood up to a lot of litigation, a lot of judgments against them, and they tell you how to handle everything. And I, you can turn the camera off, I'll share this. I don't want this on tape. And so, at one time, I had 3/4 nothing to me. Why does it mean nothing to me?
Because you're not going to report it.
Well, that's a good point. I'm not going to report it. but I've got the property tied up under a buyer favorable purchase agreement. What do I have filed against the property?
Claim of interest.
So filing another claim of interest, I don't need to do it. Now, if Larry was bringing me a deal, then I'd want to make sure, you know, that, well, I don't even know if I want to get sure that I want to do it then, he's going to sign his PA, but I want to make sure I was protected, so I want to either see his claim of interest or one recorded against it. So, all you want is the one that spells out the terms. So that would be this one with, it says assignment of buy-sell agreement, and it's not in recordable form. The one that's not in recordable form, which means it doesn't have a notary on it. So the parties would be the assignor, which is me, because I'm going to assign it to somebody, and then there's the assignee, the person receiving it, right? Which would be if I've got something tied up for $15,000 and I'm assigning it to Peter, then Peter would be the assignee.
You or your LLC?
It would be my LLC if the PA was under the LLC.
Same name
So,
that you have on the purchase.
yeah, whatever's on the purchase agreement. And it's regarding, you're doing it just like you did before, regarding, if it was Detroit, you mark off city, Wayne, city of Detroit, county of Wayne, commonly known as, I don't put the legal in it. And the reason I don't really want to do anything in recordable form, I've already got my claim filed against it. Don't forget, when you assign your PA to somebody, you've given up 100% control of the PA, of the buy-sell agreement. It's over. So if you're going to say, here, Peter, so now what's important to have in that would be to get some deposit money or collect the full amount of the fee up front, right? It gets difficult to collect the full amount of the fee up front because he wants to do his due diligence and he doesn't want to pay until he closes. But you need to get a deposit from him to make sure he's going to go through with the deal. So you want to get like a $1,000 deposit. Let's say my fee was, to sign it was $5,000. I need to get a fee from him.
Non-refundable?
Well, so here's where it gets hairy. What if the title work was screwed up on the property? So if I already had the title work back, then I could say non-refundable. But so you can start looking at it. So a payment in the first box, if you marked it, a payment of a sum of, let's put $5,000 in cash or check or money order upon execution of said assignment and a receipt which is hereby acknowledged. The payment is non-refundable for any reason, including but not limited to the failure of the seller in the aforementioned buy-sell agreement to perform. So in other words, I'm giving you this, it's a hot deal, I'm assigning it to you, and I'm done, and I'm taking all my money now. I don't get many of those marked, okay? In fact, I've never gotten one of them like that. But here's the deal, that's my conversation. Kevin Harbour, who works with me, he's gotten a bunch of those signed and has collected the money all the way up front. But he hasn't been greedy, like I'm wanting like $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 for assignment. He might assign it for $1,000 or $1,500, and people are willing to take the risk. But he got his cash right up front. And the second one is be a payment of a sum of in cash or check or money order immediately upon successful closing or completion of the aforementioned. The payment is contingent upon if the closing does not take place due to the actions or lack of, in other words, as long as it's on the part of the seller, they could, hang on. If the closing does not take place due to the actions or the lack thereof on the part of the seller, the buy-sell agreement, no sum shall be due to the assigner for the agreement. So if the seller backs out of it or kills the deal some way, then you've got to give them back their deposit or whatever. If the failure to close is due to the actions therefore or lack thereof, whichever is allowed under the terms of the buy-sell agreement on the part of the assignee, upon the expiration, cancellation, or termination of the buy-sell agreement, the assignee shall pay the assignor a sum of, and it spells it out. Now, What you could do is get a note from the person too. You could get cash and a note. And you could put that language into the note so that the note, they automatically owe the note, and the note's due and payable. Don't forget, you already got your claim against the property, so when it gets ready time to close, you're gonna be able to collect your money. And if you've got problems on this, when you've got your first deal coming together, you need to assign something, just come in and see Roy or myself, and we'll help you with the paperwork. So anyway, that's the form that we use. So there's an actual form for you to use, like a purchase agreement, but for an assignment of a purchase agreement.
Just a definition confirmation. If I'm assigning my PA to you, I'm the assignor, because I'm doing the assigning.
Yes,
And you're the assignee.
yes.
It's a buyer.
It's, if you really want to know, it's called asinore,
Yeah.
asinine.
Yeah, that's right, okay.
It's always an ass when we do that.
Real estate.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thanks.
Mark, I didn't fully quite catch on. You said you hadn't done many of these, or option A?
Oh, no, I've done a lot of them. I haven't done many where,
You get all your money up front.
so what you gotta hear in this is not, you remember how I said I take students with me? And they'll say, what about the deposit? You need to give these people a deposit. So I have a background conversation that says, I don't feel right about taking all the money up front until I know that the title works right and da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
So you get a deposit, and when the title comes in. it's
Yeah,
all
so it's
finished.
just my own standards of conditions, and my own standards that I'm setting that by. But there is, that doesn't exist. Kevin Harbor says, give me the $1,000, give me your $1,500, and here's the deal. And he does that all day long. So I'm just saying, what I'm telling you, other people are doing it differently and it works out fine, you know. I'm just, that's how I've done it, you know.
Do you run into much resistance if you're offering people a deal and you're adding 5,000 onto it, even though I guess you're able to show them how it's worth a whole lot more? But do people ever have a problem with that? Or do
Yeah,
they
some
not-
people have a problem with that, and I don't deal with them. It took a while to get that, and I had, they either appreciate the service you brought or they don't, and if they don't, that's okay, you know? And, or you can negotiate it. I mean, here's the fact, if you got that out and nobody's taking the deal and they're offering you $3,000 to do it, it's back to, you've got something in your hand right this second, or do you want to wait? So it's all up to how you want to, what you want to do.
I see here, number 2 talks about the consideration, but number 3 is the security deposit. Now, with the consideration part, is that's the amount, you're entering in the entire amount that you want
Right.
for the assignment?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And, okay, and then if you want to do a deposit, you can do that.
Okay, so what time? It's still before 3.
It's 5
so-
to 3.
5 till 3. So questions about the past 2 days. And then what we're going to do is we'll start calling some of Ron's leads that you haven't called or talked to or anything. So this will be good.
Can I just, I don't know if I fell asleep for a second or not, but can I just get clarity on the last 5 minutes of what we just talked about?
Here's what I can do.
I'm serious,
The
I
next
just-
preferred investor meeting on this form, Roy Frank, who uses it all the time,
Oh, this
can
Wednesday?
stand in front of the room, because here's what I do.
Mhm.
I say, Roy, fill out the assignment agreement and handle it. So we'll have him stand up and explain it to the depth that you want it handled,
So this
okay?
seems simple, but you know how sometimes something simple, I make it complex.
Right, and a lot of times the best way to handle it is when you actually go to do it, like Javon did when she's going out to actually get something signed.
Mhm.
you know, I had like 5 or 6 phone calls, but they weren't that long, and it was just like she understood it as she was going through it.
Okay.
So that's another way to
Don't try to know
approach
it and then go do it.
Well, I
Go
think
do
a
it
lot of
and
this
then
business
call.
is experiential in the fact that you have to actually do it. It's not in the classroom, it's on the court. And the trick's to get on the court. And that's what this whole weekend's been about, is, like, you gotta notice, generating leads is not hard. In the back of the room, we got a Detroit newspaper, and how I have my telemarketer work at the office when I don't have anything is I hand her the newspaper. She then generates me leads. And we go out on them and put deals together. So there's my big secret, you know? And she's very effective at it. All she does is have a conversation and chit chats with the people.
What is she looking for these days, basically for sell by owner type things?
Yeah, investors that are selling their properties, that she just starts calling them up, and then she asks if they're an investor, they have other properties, listens to what the motivation is. Basically what we're getting ready to do with Ron's leads.
All right, let's do it.
How often does she run into someone who says, well, I've already contacted
They get an ad in the Detroit News, so they're getting lots of phone calls from investors. The difference is she's gonna get the address, we're gonna go right out and look at it, we're gonna ask what they want. And that's probably the simplest way to do it. We're gonna go in front of a house, it's a brick house, we know that the market's 65, they want 30. We're gonna call them right back and work on putting a deal together. And that's right out of the newspaper. I'm willing to bet money that Lori and I'll do something with her Waterford house. And that, I mean, I'm willing to bet money we'll end up making some money out of that deal in one form or another, most likely inside real estate commissions. And what actually is the best solution for those people is to do a lease option. Is to do a lease option where they put the rent-to-own buyer at risk. And they're gonna do that in the form of all the money those people have got plus a note. For 10% down on a property worth $235,000, we're gonna get it gone at $235,000. We're gonna use a mortgage broker to qualify the buyers for that house, and we're gonna use a lease option strategy with them. I'm not gonna get paid until it closes. Now, whoever comes to the table with the money to put down, I'm gonna capture some of that money. Minimally half of it. That's their best exit. And I didn't really get that until she said it in the meeting here, because I was looking at it from a different perspective. So, but that is the best exit strategy for those people. And you guys all most of you went through the option seminar. You know that you can attract people that want to do rent to own. You know that you can use a mortgage person as your coach inside that. And you know that you can actually put those people at risk through the use of a note and all the money they got in their pocket.
What I'm noticing in trying to get Evans their lease with option to buy, with even some of the preferred investors that have properties that, you know, they're trying to either, that they're open to a lease with option to buy, is that, you know, I let them know up front, they don't have a lot of money for a down payment for obvious reasons. So I'm telling them I have no problem doing it. They have no problem doing a note and putting themselves at risk. But I've noticed that even with the folks in the class or preferred investors, they don't want to take the risk because they're like, well, I gotta have 8,000. So I'm like, okay, let's do a note. And they're like, no. And I'm like,
Because people want the cash, maybe, you think?
yeah. And so I've ran into that 2 times.
You need to put that out on an email broadcast, what they're willing to do. That they'll take a note and spell it all out and put, this is the amount of cash you'll get, and this is the note you'll get.
Okay.
And you can also run an ad, a small classified ad, and see what you come up with on that.
Okay. 'Cause I
And
was just
you can also look for anybody that's working pre-foreclosures and say, anybody that you know that's working pre-foreclosures, because all the people working pre-foreclosures would have properties that they would be interested in doing that, because they can take their money and catch up the arrearage and they can get a house. Also, you need to qualify the people you're working with that they put themselves into, they have a very limited amount of properties. In fact, you've already taken them to one. They couldn't afford the payment, was that the deal? But
not following.
You had another house where you could catch up payments.
No, oh, that's the, wood, that's my property I have that I deeded off. This doesn't
They don't
make
qualify.
this-
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
it's not enough equity.
But you can go find something that does make sense for them.
Right, okay, I see what you're saying.
So, and then you could also approach under renting a property, you can go into the MLS and find rent-to-owns where they've been in there for a long time and approach a letter campaign, look for the ones that have been on the market the longest time, they'll look to do that.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. I said, you know what? Because the one property was just listed to lease. I'm like, well, they think they can probably get their money up front. So, and once I experienced it 2 times, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna look for these lease properties that's been out there for.
With a realtor, or in traditional real estate, a property's been on the market a long time, then the realtor's gonna say, well, we will lease it. They don't think in rent-to-own terms, okay?
Right.
So I'm positive you could probably go find something there too. Do a search of all the rental properties, then offer a rent-to-own.
Okay.
I think that something will come together. You just may have to
Right. Do a couple.
keep, yeah.
Right.
So in Lori's situation, for that couple, so you're going to be looking for a buyer by doing an email broadcast to all the investors in the world to look for someone who's interested in purchasing that property?
No, we're gonna run an ad in the paper saying, would you like to, a rent-to-own situation for this house in Waterford, here's the terms. I'm gonna coach the people on how to do it. They don't know how to put the paperwork together or anything else.
Oh, okay, so you're gonna run a newspaper.
I actually already am running an ad in the paper for lease-to-own people. I
Mhm.
just don't have a house specified because I've been looking for a person. I have not actually wanted to have possession of a house
Now you have
or
both.
without having an exit strategy, so I'm advertising for the person. I'm gonna let the person know they can go pick out their own house, and then we match that, we hook them, I want to hook them up. That was my intention. Okay, when I ran this ad, that was my intention. But I can see with the ad already running, I've already gotten calls of
She
other
has her
people.
own solution.
So I could, unless no one wanted a house in Waterford, because what I was doing is letting them pick out their own house to lease and then purchase. But someone might want a house in Waterford, and then that could work.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I got it. That's good.
Okay.
That's a good aha.
Yeah.
So you're saying you put, what kind of ad?
I ran an ad for anyone that wanted the opportunity to lease option the house of their choice.
Oh, okay, so you're looking for buyers.
Looking for just the buyer.
How's it, are you getting a lot of calls?
I've had 2 in 2 days. I've only ran it for 2 days.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's
Two
good.
calls. I got another call, I haven't been able to connect with him, he called me yesterday during the meeting, but
Yeah.
I mean,
What paper do you run it in?
Oakland Press.
That's good. So you're right in the market area.
I, oh,
Oh, you are.
okay, good.
If you're in Waterford, you don't read the Free Press, Oakland Press.
I got it, okay.
So,
So that's the paper you'll run the ad in for the potential buyers.
So, right, so if I don't get a call, right, so that's would be an option, was just to specify that house then, right?
mhm.
Okay.
First gotta meet with the people, make
Yeah.
sure they're aligned.
Yeah, I got
But,
you.
you know, yeah. So, more questions? So, anybody's gotta go can just take off now. If not, we'll start making some phone calls. So, come on up, let's see what you got.
We got like 2 people calling today.
2? Okay, then we'll take it. Well, hang on, before you call them, tell us the circumstances.
Well, I got a call not too long ago. A guy has 2 properties in foreclosure, and basically looking to see if we can do anything to get him off his hands, pretty much. And I didn't do like the whole background check on the situation. He called me like last night at like 5 o'clock, so
That's fine.
I really haven't done anything with him yet. He has 2 properties.
So hang on, don't, oh, yeah. Who's got paperwork we can fill out?
I use my lead, I
You getting the lead sheet?
Then how do you get your number, Ron?
Yeah, size up.
From Science, okay.
All right, he's got 2 houses?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna stand up here with you and we'll ask questions. Who wants to practice in talking? Anybody? Come on.
And somebody, if they haven't had
Yeah, who wants,
opportunity, let's
anybody
somebody
want
else. I'll do, because I want to keep getting experience, but I want to give somebody else the opportunity too.
Thanks for motion.
Okay.
Quiet person.
Come on up.
We're looking
You're
for
gonna tell-
volunteers to work a lead?
We
Do
need
you
a
have
quiet person.
speakerphone?
I mean,
Yeah.
We need a quiet person.
You wanna do it? Come on up,
No,
Larry.
I talk too much over there.
So, wait, don't call me. So all we're gonna do is just talk to somebody, have a conversation with them, and find out where they're at.
I'm surprised he's not doing it.
Now, does this guy wanna just lead off, you know where he's at inside this?
He's in foreclosure right now, he's pretty much wants to do whatever we can do to help him out.